Okay, hello everyone. This is Maddie Regis, paid media manager at Automox, and I'm back with another episode of IT Insiders, Automox's podcast that introduces you to the people behind the product. And we're actually changing up the pod a little bit since its inception. We've been doing this for a little while now, and we've just gotten a lot of really interesting perspectives on career paths. So we're kind of shifting our focus to that, and we'll just be talking a lot about the different, options that there are in tech. There's, I think, way more jobs than people realize. So I hope everyone enjoys listening to this and maybe learns a thing or two about the different options that they have. But getting to this month and our theme, it is all about the end user experience, both and your experience as well. So, with us today is Kat Breeggemann, who is our digital customer experience manager at Automox. Thanks so much for joining us, Kat.
Hey, hello. Thanks for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Awesome. Okay, so let's get into it. Let's get into the details. Want to talk your career, and we'll kind of discuss, a little bit about how it's evolved. So I always do a little bit of LinkedIn stalking before the podcast. And it looks like me, you started in the marketing world, kind of marketing communications, and then you kind of moved on to customer experience, customer success. So how did your career kind of move from one to the other?
Yeah, so I I went to school for communications and journalism, and in my final years of college, I had been editor in chief of a student newspaper for 2 years, running that for a long time, trying to figure out where I wanted to take my career, and I'd done a couple of different internships doing internal communications for a construction company and um, doing various types of journalism and PR and entirely sure where I wanted to go yet. Like I think probably a lot of people are at the age of 21.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah,
I know
no one knows.
everyone.
We don't know what we're doing yet. We're just trying to
Yeah.
figure it out. And an opportunity came up to the company I used to work at, Sales Loft, was looking for a intern in their customer success department. And I think that was probably the first time I'd even heard of a customer success department. I had no idea what that terminology meant. I think most people don't unless you're really in the tech space and have interacted with customer success in some way. Um, but it was at a company that I was living in Atlanta at the time, and SalesOps was really big in Atlanta, and was like a really good tech startup to go to. So I ended up getting the job there and started off. It was a funny internship because I think it was the first time they had had an intern in customer success as well. So they didn't entirely know exactly what to do with me,
Yeah.
which ended up being great though, because that meant that I got pulled into so many different projects that I probably would never have gotten the opportunity to do in a typical internship. Um, and then after about 8 months of doing that internship, because it was a summer one that continued on into the fall until I graduated, um, they were like, "We'd like to have you as a full-time employee. We want you to work as a scaled CSM in our customer success department." And I was like, "That sounds great. I really love this team. I really like the work that we're doing. It's super interesting to me." And it played on some of the same strengths or the things that I liked about communications that I had gone into that kind of field for. It was a lot of communications. There's a lot of emailing and writing and um, like process development that I really enjoyed. There's a lot of getting to interact with, various different types of people, both in the organization, but also your customers as well. And so it was kind of meeting all of the things that I enjoyed doing that I had wanted to try to pursue in a terms of journalism. And I was like, yeah, this sounds like a great opportunity. Let's go for it. And I'm so glad I did because I started that full career January of 2020.
Oh,
So
wow.
really got lucky in hindsight with that and how the rest of that year played out for the world.
Yeah. Nothing strange or unprecedented happened at all.
No,
So
yeah, what?
yeah. Okay, cool. Yeah, well, that you answered my second question, which was going to be like, what are your favorite aspects of the customer success department in general? But once you actually, got into the CX side, I know from your career path and obviously what you're doing here at Automox, you got to hone in on the digital side of things, which, surprise, surprise, that's in your title.
Yeah.
So some of those things are like in-app support, you develop different resources like you mentioned. So what made you decide to go in that specific direction? Was it just kind of like organic, or did you end up with the interest that you already had in CX? Is that just kind of the natural path that you had forward?
Some of it was a bit organic. Like I said, during that kind of internship period, I got to be involved with a lot of projects that I wouldn't necessarily normally have been involved with. And part of it was spinning up what SalesLoft referred to as customer programs at the time. And that meant developing like scaled events for our customers. So it was daily office hours and weekly webinars and customer roundtables, and finding different ways that we could serve up education and opportunities to our customers in a scaled slash digital format. Those two words get used interchangeably a lot in the department that I work. Um, but at the same time that I was doing that, I was also a full CSM. So I was kind of doing two of these things at one time. And it eventually got to a point where I realized that the scaled stuff we were building kept growing and growing and growing, both in popularity, like our customers were wanting more and more of it, but also it was having a really big impact on um, on our customer base and on the customer experience and on the revenue of the organization too. So I ended up going to my leaders and saying, "Hey, I basically have two different jobs I'm doing. I have a job where I'm a CSM. I'm talking to customers day in and day out, and I have a job where I'm building these scaled processes. And this is the part of the job that I like better, and I want to do that full time." And just kind of advocated for myself with that a little bit. Thankfully, I had some really great leaders who agreed with me and said, I think you've made a good case for this. Let's go ahead and get you that as a full-time role. And that's how I transitioned into doing what I do now and what I've brought into Automox of being able to build these scaled initiatives and these ways of serving our customers proactively and without having to rely on like a one-to-one relationship.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, it's really interesting, and I love the advocacy. I think that's a great takeaway for anyone listening. I mean, that's you present your case, you gather all your facts, and yeah, I feel like that, you have some hard data, you have some hard information. I feel like that usually ends up being a good way to get leadership to do what you want, or at least, go in the right direction, right? So, is there anything else that you'd like to add just in terms of like what you're doing day to day at Automox, just to kind of give everyone a little bit, again, understanding your career path and maybe some options for those listening, what
Yeah.
you have ended up doing today?
Yeah. So I say that I am a program manager, which basically means anything that we are looking at with, I guess, let me take a step back maybe. The problem that a lot of tech companies run into these days is, and that customer success in particular runs into, is as we are growing, we keep bringing on new customers, right? That's the goal. You want to sell your product, you want more people to buy it, you want to keep growing as a company. Bringing on new customers means that there's now more end users that you have to be able to educate, you have to be able to communicate with, you have to be able to support. And it's not feasible or reasonable to do that in a one-to-one scenario where you have, one dedicated CSM who owns, say, maybe 30 to 80 or 100 different customer accounts, and they manage that and make sure that those accounts and those end users at those companies are knowing what to do inside your product. That's not feasible to do when you have 4,000 different customer accounts that you're having to deal with, or whatever your number may be. So a lot of companies now are trying to figure out, okay, how do we create educational content, and how do we proactively reach out to our customers in a scaled, in a like one to many sort of fashion. So a lot of what I do is around that. It's about um, using product usage data to notice when maybe a customer is running into some issues or an end user isn't doing what we want them to do inside of the product, and reaching out to them proactively through an automated email system. Some of it is also using in-app messaging. So that's where we build out banners or pop-ups or guides or tooltips or something inside of the product itself, inside the console, and give education to the user right where they are inside of our product. So we're getting kind of ahead of them ever running into an issue. And we're able to then serve out that piece of content, to multiple different people in the console versus just talking to somebody one-on-one in a customer call. So it's a lot of focus on where are the places that we can maybe add in some automation or use technology to digitally serve up a customer experience to our end users and help them to get through the process of using our product correctly. Because them using our product correctly makes sure that they're getting the full benefits of it, and it helps them in their day-to-day as well. We want to make sure these IT professionals are using everything that in their technology wheelhouse that we provide them, so that their lives and their jobs are easier too.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, as someone who works in a lot of platform software, things like that day to day, obviously not in IT, but still, I think that's something that I really appreciate from my vendors is when they are clearly listening and understanding, maybe where there's some hangups in the customer experience, or hey, this particular customer like has a lot of success because of XYZ, and then being able to scale that out to everyone is super helpful. So yeah, I love all of that.
Yeah.
Okay, we'll get one more question about your career, and then we will do a couple of more fun things. So,
Okay.
last
Hey,
question.
I love talking about this. Is fun for me. I love talking about this. So.
Okay, good. That's good. I mean, I guess it should all be fun, right? But there's
Right.
as everyone knows who has listened before, we end with a game, and I've got one more little more personal question for you. But last career focused question is, what's the most important lesson that you've learned about end user experience throughout your career in CS?
I thought a while about how to word this properly, but I would just say never assume that your end user knows what to do. Like, never assume that. You could have the most simple, straightforward product experience, right? Or it could seem really simple to you, and someone is still going to get hung up on the steps to take to do the process they want. Um, I saw this meme once that it was basically like a picture, like a phone screen in front of you, and on the phone screen it says hold finger to open, right? And it's like shows on the screen maybe like you're supposed to hold your finger on the screen, and then there's a picture of somebody right above just holding their finger. And I felt like that just really encapsulated, like, you never know exactly how someone is going to interpret it. Never assume that they know exactly what they are supposed to do. Um, there is most likely some place in your product that an end user is getting hung up on how to do the process. So for me, a lot of things we build are finding those pressure points or those friction areas and making something that can help explain. It's using in-app messaging to explain, okay, here's the next step that you're supposed to do. Like, oh, hey, I saw you just did this thing. Here's the next step. Or, hey, it seems like you haven't done this thing yet. Let me show you how to do it inside of the product so that you're not confused. You're not missing out on part of our features.
Yeah,
So
absolutely.
never
Yeah,
assume that people know what they need to do. Always
right. Well,
assume that someone needs guidance.
yeah, everybody's brain works a little bit differently. So it's like, it's not because they lack the knowledge necessarily, but yeah, I think especially when you're in the product all the time, it can be a little hard to have that sort of like step back and perspective of what would it be like if I had, zero knowledge base for it. So I love that.
Yeah. And I think that's especially helpful. Like when I started here, I think that's a great thing to do is when you're new at a company, take a step in, jump in, try to do the things and see where you get confused on things as well. I often say that it's kind of a bit of a superpower to, I will like candidly say I probably don't know the sales process as well as some people, and I don't know our product as well as some people here. But I think those are two superpowers of mine because it makes me be able to see the gaps in those things a little bit better and see the gap in the sales to customer handoff and see the gap in where product is confusing.
Yeah, 100%. That totally makes sense. Okay. Well, we've gotten the career mostly out of the way. So, my next question for you is outside of the virtual office, because we're fully remote here at Automox. What do you like to do?
Oh man, so many things. So I live in Park City, Utah, which means
Oh,
that
wow.
I do all of the Park City, Utah things. I ski in the winter, I bike and I hike and I go for runs and I just basically spend as much time outside as I possibly can. I also have a 4-year-old golden retriever named Piper,
Oh,
so go
oh,
for many walks with her. She's a great like outdoor buddy. I actually have my bike right behind me here in my living room. So yeah, I do a lot of outdoorsy stuff, and if I'm not outdoors, then I'm probably inside reading some sort of book.
love it. Awesome. Any titles to recommend?
I'm currently finishing up a trilogy that has was just absolutely phenomenal. It's called the first book in the series is called Jade City, and it's like a fantasy. Imagine it's like a bit of kind of kung fu warrior type of vibe to it. It's really good. Highly recommend anybody who likes fantasy series.
Very cool. I'll have to check it out. And fun fact, I have a cat. Her name is also Piper, so that's a fun little
No way.
fun
How did we not
yeah,
know this?
I know. I love that. That's
So
amazing. It's a
funny.
good you picked a good one.
It is a good name. It is a good name.
Okay, and then last sort of more personal question, which I mean, you could argue this is career focused, but I think there's a lot of different directions you can take this, which is, if you had one piece of advice for either someone who's just graduating college or maybe looking to make a career switch, what would that be for pursuing this kind of career path, career stuff in general, just, anything like that?
Gosh, I think my advice that I give to people trying to figure out what to do coming out of college is I always heard the phrase like, oh, you have to like really love what you do. And I think a lot of people go into it and they say, okay, great, I have a passion for this thing or this hobby. And so that's what I'm going to turn into my career. But I have the take that your career does not need to be something that you were formerly passionate about. It just has to align with stuff that you like doing. Like I really enjoy building different processes. I enjoy project management. I enjoy writing, and I get to do all of those things in the job that I do, even though it's not, maybe traditionally what people would think of as being following your passion into your career. So I would say look at like break down the things that you like. If you break it down into those pieces, break it down into okay, I don't just like journalism, I like writing, or I don't just like, you know, uh, architecture, I like the project management of a of a project like that. Break it down into the little pieces and then see what other options exist for those little pieces.
Yeah, 100% agree. I started as a pre-vet student in college because I really liked
Oh,
science. And
yeah,
it's funny because I think most people would be like, wow, well, now you're in marketing. Well, yeah, but I really like data analysis. And a lot of what I do day to day for the business is related to that. And
yep,
you can see, kind of how that relates to science and experimentation and things like that. So yeah, you've kind of got to think like, okay, what are the common denominators here? But yeah, I really like that. Totally.
exactly.
Okay. Last thing is our game, as everyone's always expecting. I've just got a couple of questions for you, and I'm calling this game Experience is Key. We're going to talk about some customer experience facts. So,
Okay.
first one is blank percent of American adults have posted comments or reviews online about the products or services that they buy. So, I'm going to give you three percentage options, and you pick the one you think is right.
Okay.
There's 24%, 76%, and 48%.
Ugh. I I think I'm gonna go with 24% because my initial thought was about one third. So that's probably the closest.
Yep, you are 100% right, which is also interesting to me because that means most people don't, right? So I feel like that's another takeaway of like, just because you're not hearing directly from a customer about a certain thing doesn't necessarily mean that a lot of people aren't experiencing it. It seems like a lot of people just kind of let it slide
Yeah.
and don't necessarily want to report on it.
It's also why you have to take some things like NPS with a grain of salt,
Yep.
because probably too within that 24%, I bet most of it is negative, right? I feel like me personally, I really only talk about something unless it was extremely good or pretty bad. And
Yep.
more often than not, like if I probably went and looked at my own Google reviews, I probably look like a real Karen because the only time I'm talking about something was if it was really, really terrible. And I just don't want someone else to go through that same experience. So it's the same type of thing with customer experience and end user feedback. You have to take it with a little bit of grain of salt. In either direction, right? We've definitely made changes where here at Automox where we've had five, say 5 users give us feedback about one thing. And that's not a ton when you think about the thousands of end users that we have here. But it is a ton if you think about the fact that, okay, that 5% is probably representing a larger percentage of our user base that does have these feelings but hasn't said anything yet.
Yep. 100%. Exactly. Okay, this next one is just a little bit more fun, but I just thought it was so funny I had to include it. So, of these three options, what industry do you think received the highest number of complaints with rage?
Oh,
So, the options are internet providers, airlines, and restaurants.
oh, with rage, I
Yeah.
feel like it's for if it was, I would say airlines because the stakes are really high there.
Yeah, and you would be correct, and I would 100% agree. I mean, I hate to say it, but I feel like that is it's just a hard experience, right? Because obviously, like you're trying to get somewhere, it can be extremely frustrating very fast. So
Right. Like if it's a restaurant, oh, the worst thing that happened is your food was not great. But if it's an airline, you could have missed something very important happening in your life if something goes wrong.
yeah, and I will say, I think especially in the past couple years, I feel like everybody's kind of felt the pain. There's just been a lot of
Yeah.
delayed flights, things like that. So I get it, and it made me chuckle.
Yep. Yep.
All right. Well, Kat, thank you so much for joining us today. Thank you for all of your awesome wisdom and advice on your career path. And everyone, make sure you follow us on YouTube, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts, and stay tuned for new episodes every Tuesday and Thursday.
All right. Thank you guys so much.